Hello, the internet, and welcome to the top of the East Division and the first round in the 2024-25 board game tournament elimination tournament. So here's our 8 games. We have the 1 seed Penny Arcade up against the 16 seed Solar Quest, 8 seed Wingspan versus 9 seed Tournay, 5 seed Settlers of Catan versus 12 seed High Bid, and finally 4 seed Pandemic versus 13 seed Luna. For those who haven't seen the other videos, my kid and I play each of these games, and then we rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. We add those two totals, and then we will do a die roll, which we will need a whole bunch of dice this time, because only one of these games is actually safe. Now, for a game to be safe, it has to do 2 things. 1, it has to have a blowout, which means it has to outscore its opponent by at least 2.5 points. The reason for this is that we are going to roll 2 6-sided dice and add half of the value of each die to each of the games. And so if one rolls a 6, one other rolls a 1, you could gain about 2.5 points. But if you win by 2.5 points and you add 2.5 points, that's a tie. Tie goes to the game that had the higher score before the die roll. So so for a game to have a chance, it has to be it has to be 2 points behind the winner or less. So it has to keep it close. The second thing is that it has to score at 18 or higher to be safe. If it only scores a 17.5 or scores lower, it will need a die roll to see if it moves on to the next round, because we have a whole bunch of games in the play-ins that scored an 18.5, and if they outscore any of the winners, after the die roll, of course, then they will move on instead. Right now, waiting in the wings on the bubble is Twilight Imperium. So if any of these games fail to score 18.5 or more, then Twilight Imperium will punch its ticket into the tournament, and that winner will be out. All right, so our first matchup, Penny Arcade is a deck building game by Cryptozoic. We love our deck building games. Penny Arcade, not the one I like the best, but it is pretty good. I like Naruto a little bit better. Versus Solar Quest, which is sort of a space version of Monopoly, but with a whole bunch of twists. One which is lasers, which sometimes makes this game only last 10 minutes, which is what happened. Penny Arcade, as normal, scored pretty high. It scored an 18.5. Solar Quest only scored a 14. It's an okay game, but it's not a great game. Definitely better than Monopoly, but it's a game from the 90s. So, actually from the 80s, late 80s. Game I like. I played it in my childhood, but it's not a great game. It's an okay game. And so it will be relegated to the play-ins next year, which is, to be honest, kind of where it belongs. And Penny Arcade is moving on to the next round in a blowout. No die roll required because it already scored an 18.5. All right, our 8-9 matchups, which so far have been really crazy. This was the least crazy one of them all. Wingspan, yes, we don't have a box because we have the digital version of Wingspan, so I just have a piece of paper saying Wingspan. Wingspan, a good game. Very popular game. Scored a 17. We like it. We like our strategy games. Not the greatest game in the world, but it is a decent game. Tournay is also a strategy game, but man, it's a game that we really struggle with the rules. I have to look up every single card every time, even though we've played it several times now. I kind of don't like that. My kid rated it pretty high. I rated it mid. And so it only scored a 15.5, which is what it scored last year. This is a game that has been kind of steadily falling, and I think it's bottomed out. So maybe we'll see have a floor here, but it is a 1.5 behind. So for it to win the match, it's going to have to outscore Wingspan by 4. So it's going to have to roll a 5 or 6 and have Wingspan roll a 1 or 2. For Tournay to move on to the next round, it will have to roll a 6. If it does not roll a 6, even if it wins the match with a 5, it does not move on, and Twilight Imperium will take its place. For Wingspan to move on, it needs to roll a 3 or higher. If it rolls a 1 and 2, even if it wins, it will not move on. Again, Twilight Imperium will punch its ticket instead. So, who's going to move on to the next round? Is it going to be Wingspan, or will it be Tournay on a huge long shot? Or will it be Twilight Imperium? Tournay is going to be the black die. Wingspan is going to be the white die because this is a black box and that's a white sheet of paper. Why not? Here we go. And the dice rolls say... the dice giveth and the dice taketh away. With only a 2, that gives Wingspan an 18. Now, this is actually the first game to score an 18. So there is a chance that Wingspan could end up in the tournament if we end up with 4 additional games score under an 18. But as it sits, Wingspan is out. Even though it wins the match, Tournay is also out. Twilight Imperium finally punches its ticket. So it is the 4th team from the play-ins to finally make the tournament. The next game up is Catan Rivals, which, amazingly, we have Catan. So this was the 5-12 matchup, and the 12 seed played like a 12 seed. This is an old 3M game. This is a game that has some problems. It's kind of fun, but there's 2 things that can happen with this game to really screw up things. Luck is a huge factor in this game. You can end up with a hand that almost wins you instantly. You could also rope-a-dope your opponent so that they can not do anything, especially in a 2-player game, which I did to my poor kid. First game, I lucked one, and the second one, I got him down to $140 and just bet $150 on everything and won every single card, and he couldn't do anything. That doesn't make it a great game. So it only scored a 14. However, it was not a blowout because Settlers of Catan is a game that has a random setup, and sometimes those random setups don't work so well. I did get a chance to play in the Settlers of Catan National Tournament last year. It was a lot of fun. I didn't make it to the semis. Was pretty close. Hopefully I'll get to go again, but it really taught me how this game is really supposed to be played, which we played it 2-player, and you're not supposed to play it 2-player, but it can be played 2-player, not very well. And it kind of showed it only scored a 16. So for Settlers of Catan to move on, it needs a 5 or 6. So the odds are against it. High bid cannot move on. It can win if it rolls a 6 and Settlers of Catan rolls a 1, but it cannot move on. In fact, it will be relegated to the play-ins next year. So it's the second one out of the top half of the East to be relegated. In fact, those are the only 2 that are be relegated. So we're now up to 10 relegated games out of our first 40 games. All right, so no, sorry. Yes, that's right. 10. All right. So I'm going to roll 2 dice. The green die is going to be for high bid. The white die is going to be for Settlers of Catan. Because green box, not green box. Who will move on? Will it be Settlers of Catan or Settlers of Catan Rivals, the card game? Who moves on to the next round? It will be Settlers of Catan moves on with a 5. So the 17 doesn't move on, but the 16 does. That's the craziness and insanity of the dice this year. This finishes with the 17, which is good for this game, but not good enough. So Settlers of Catan moves on to the next round. What will face the winner of this matchup? Pandemic, great, really great cooperative game, a lot of fun. We usually played the easy version because, I'm playing with a kid, but this time we actually played standard, and we just barely won, just barely. Like one more round and we've been toast. We had a chance at the end to get toast, and luckily the odds were in our favor. So we won. Very fun game. Scored a 17. Luna's probably a game you haven't heard of. It's a Z-Man game. They're both Z-Man games. It's a game that it's kind of hard to describe this one. It's kind of a work placement kind of game where you have different ways to score points, and you have these different islands you can place your workers on, and they do different things on the islands. And workers from islands can grab certain tiles that can score. There is zero luck involved in this game. It is 100% strategy. The first time you play, you're going to be kind of overwhelmed because there's a lot of choices to make. So my kid, when he was 11, this game was kind of too much for him, and it only scored, it was a 14 out of 20 game. Now that he's a little bit older and can handle the more choices, he actually really enjoys this game because there's a lot of strategy involved. It's a lot of fun. And so this one actually scored a 17. So Pandemic and Luna have the same score going into the die roll. So we're going to roll the die. If either of them roll a 3 or higher, the winner will move on. If they roll both 1s and 2s, Settlers of Catan Rivals, the card game, will punch its ticket to the second round. In the case that there is a tie, usually the higher scoring game has the tiebreaker, but since these scored the same, my kid and I decided before the die roll which game we preferred. We both picked Pandemic. So Pandemic has the tiebreaker. So for Luna to win, it has to roll a higher die roll. If they roll the same, Pandemic wins. All right, let's see who goes up against Settlers of Catan in the second round. Pandemic, Luna, or will the unthinkable happen and we'll end up with Settlers of Catan Rivals, which won't necessarily play Settlers of Catan. It'll be based on, it probably would not. Actually, I can guarantee it would not, because this is the 4 seed. The number 1 game from the play-ins is going to take the best seed, which right now is a 5 seed. So if this goes to that, then that would go. But it just punches ticket to somewhere, and it would be the lowest seed that goes. All right, here we go. The die half toll. The die toll for... Oh, I forgot to mention the black was going to be Luna. The white was going to be Pandemic. And Luna wins. And he got the 3. And so, huge upset. The 13 seed upsets the 4, an even bigger upset than the upsets we saw in the bottom of the West. Pandemic is out. Luna will go up against Settlers of Catan in the second round. So what an amazing upset. What a step up for Luna that was a very low seed but played well above its weight, took on the Pandemic, and we'll move on to the next round. With the die rolls definitely make this interesting. So let me know in the comments what outcome you like the best, what one you like the worst, what you would have liked to have seen. Any of these you want to see make it to the Final Four or win the whole thing. Do you like the die rolls? If not, what do you think we should do with the die rolls? Do you think they're too strong? Do you think they're not strong enough? They're probably strong enough. I mean, we just saw 13 bump out of 4, but that happens in the sports tournaments as well. You see that happen in the real world. A little bounce of a ball, and a close game, and the underdog wins it. So can't keep that underdog in the game. You got to blow them out. And Pandemic didn't do that, so Pandemic's going back on the shelf for another year. So that is this video, and we'll see you in the next one, the bottom of the East, where we're going to highlight some games such as Star Realms, which won the tournament 2 years ago, and 7 Wonders. So until then, goodbye.